Oh, hello, Noam Chomsky. It's funny to run into you because as I was walking, I was thinking about corporate campuses, blurring lines between work and personal life. But now things have gone the other way since we've zoomed the workplace into our homes.
If it's the companies creating campuses, we have every reason to be skeptical. If it's the workers who are cooperating in organizing efforts to mix leisure with work, it's perfectly reasonable.
What do you think about love and capitalism, or religion and capitalism? Many advertisers try to tap into our ideals and moralities, promoting companies like individuals who care for the environment.
Advertisements are quite openly a way to induce those who observe them to act in the interests of the company that is sending them. They're an effort to control opinion and attitudes. That's not concealed. That's their obvious purpose. We understand that. So therefore, we disregard what they claim to be doing, and we ask what they are in fact doing. So take caring for the environment, caring for consumers. The advertisers have no concern for consumers except to get them to buy the product. They have no concern for the environment. Basically, that's what advertising is about. Advertising is not a social service. It's an effort to induce purchasing, open, undisguised. So what about the environment? Well, we could look at concrete cases. For example, an interesting case was at the last international conference on the environment, the Glasgow conference, last October. The CEO of BlackRock made an impassioned address about how the investor community is willing to devote huge sums, maybe. They have control of $130 trillion. They'll devote large parts of it to dealing with the environmental crisis. It was very impressive. The American representative, John Kerry, was enthusiastic. He gave a euphoric talk about how we've solved the problem. The investor community, with its huge resources, is now on our side. Well, that's caring for the environment. Now, there was a small footnote pointed out by a leading political economist, Adam Tooze, Columbia University. He pointed out that, yes, Larry Fink offered this, but with some provisos. One, that the investments be profitable, and two, if it turns out they're not profitable, the taxpayer will pay them for it through the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Okay, that's the nature of an advertisement. We all know that. It means when you get an offer from a company, you look at the small print. Well, that's the small print.
I just read Bell Hooks's All About Love, and she wrote that there can be no power struggle or domination in love. These characteristics describe business strategy. So what kind of love can exist under capitalism?
Exactly the kind of love that Larry Fink illustrated. Love for profit and power. That's the nature of the institution. If someone in the institution does not abide by that principle, they'll be out of the game. It's the nature of a competitive market. Suppose a Ford Motor Company decides that it's interested in, not in profit, but in benefiting consumers and future generations by not concentrating on profit, but rather producing, their competitor will be working on how to make profit tomorrow. Ford Motor Company won't be in business at the time when these investments come to fruition. That's the nature of a competitive market. It's the nature of capitalism. That's why, if you look at history, the owners of capital have regularly called upon the government to intervene, to protect them from the ravages of the market, which would destroy them if they're let to run free. It's the nature of the institution. Now, what's the point of talking about possibilities that capitalists might undertake that would be suicidal within the framework of the institutions?
I apologize for taking you off topic here, but since I have you captive, I'm just going to ask, what are your thoughts on the recent Supreme Court rulings? And is this a warning of things to come?
It's more than a warning. We see it happening right now when medical officials in states that permit abortion are being threatened by legal action and prosecution if say they carry out procedures for people who came to that state for abortion. In a recent case, a 10-year-old girl who wanted an abortion after a rape went to Indiana. The provider was threatened, made a lot of publicity. Pharmacists, CVS, for example, had to send out orders to all of its stores, all of its pharmacies around the country. So the warning to pharmacists was, unless you have explicit proof from a medical authority that this will not be used for abortion, you can't dispense the drug. Well, that's going to mean that many people who have the diseases won't get the drugs. And things like this are happening all over the country. But that's the bare beginning. If you look at Justice Thomas's concurring opinion, he spelled out the rest of what's coming. He listed a series of court cases, Supreme Court cases, which he says were judged wrongly or dubiously by the same principles that are overturning Roe v. Wade. Said the court now has to look into those, and it will. Those are cases involving the right to contraception, the right to choice of a sexual partner, and the right of gay marriage. Those are what are coming next. There is a clear effort, really undisguised, to impose a strict form of extreme Christian nationalist theology on the whole society. It's coming from several sources, what's called Reconstruction Christianity, extremist evangelical doctrines, right-wing Catholic doctrines, which most of the current members of the court adhere to. And they want to impose their particular theocratic vision on the society. Roe v. Wade, if you look at the background and the reasoning, is a step in this direction, not the only step.
I know you didn't ask, but I'm down here visiting film archives in search of 12 propaganda cartoons made during the Cold War in Mexico City under the codename Project Pedro. Yes, you heard me. A covert operation by the U.S. government to create Spanish-speaking, anti-Russian, and anti-communist cartoons to appear indigenous in the global south, otherwise known as maquiladora. Anyways, you've written extensively on U.S.-Mexican trade policies, and South America, and stealth political propaganda, and U.S.-Mexican labor relations. What do you think about NAFTA so many years later, or the USMCA?
My thoughts now are about the same as what I wrote in 1994, when the executive version of NAFTA, Clinton's version, was rammed through virtually without discussion, without even informing the labor movement, as was required by U.S. trade law. I think they were informed about 24 hours before the executive version was passed by Congress. They did write a response. The Labor Advisory Committee wrote a critique pointing out that this version of NAFTA will lead to a low-growth, low-wage economy. And what they offered in response was a high-wage economy. Their proposal was, of course, disregarded, never even reported. It happened to virtually coincide with the analysis that had been given by the Congressional Office of Technology Assessment, Congress's Research Bureau. Since dismantled, Congress doesn't want the information. Well, that was all thrown out. We now have experience, and what was predicted is exactly what happened. It led to low-wage, highly exploited, high-profit labor in Mexico, a loss of many American jobs, mostly union jobs. Further effect of NAFTA, which I should have but hadn't anticipated at the time, was that it proved to be a very effective weapon against labor organizing in the United States. Actually, there was a study by researchers at the Cornell University program in labor history, labor relations, taken within NAFTA auspices. Studies showed that about a very high percentage, I think maybe 50%, of organizing efforts in the United States were disrupted and undermined by employer threats that if people tried to organize the union, they'd shift the operation to Mexico. They weren't really intending to do that, but the threat was sufficient to undermine organizing. Those threats are illegal, but under Clinton, labor law was not enforced. So if you have a criminal state, it doesn't matter if actions are illegal. So in fact, not only did it undermine jobs in the United States, especially union jobs, but also led to a heavily exploited maquila economy in Mexico, pretty much as anticipated.
Before you go, I'd like to plug a panel I'm organizing in New York City in February with Keller Esterling, Mackenzie Wark, and Carlos Oliva Mendoza. It's called, are you ready? Future Space, Trade and Capitalism in Digital Cities. We'll talk about the future of urban life, even more digitized social experiences and currencies, and possible architectural shifts. You should come. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Noam Chomsky. You're an actual living legend.